Welcome, everybody. Thank you for being here for this wonderful occasion to hear and honor Bill T. Jones today. My name is Inderpal Grewal. I'm professor in Women's Gender and Sexuality Studies, and this year I'm part of the LGBT committee. And before I turn it over to Professor Amy Cox to introduce our honoree, I want to say a few words of thanks to all those who made this award and made this event possible. So I don't know if you know, but James Brudner, after whom this award is named, was an AIDS activist, an urban planner, a journalist, and a photographer. He was a man of wit and compassion, outsized knowledge and curiosity, and he's valued academic inquiry, direct action, and artistic expression. He spent 12 years as a policy analyst in the city of New York, earned an MA in journalism from NYU, and wrote for various publications on gay and AIDS-related topics. He became a member of ACT UP, which you all know about, the Treatment Action Group, and other organizations after the death of his twin brother, Eric, of AIDS in 1987. He worked on many prevention and treatment issues with NIH and with pharma corporations and federal agencies. And in his final years, he devoted much of his time to traveling the back roads of rural America with a camera. Jim died of AIDS-related illness on September 18, 1998, at the young age of 37. Through his will, he established the Brudner Prize at Yale as a perpetual annual prize for scholarship and activism on gay and lesbian history and contemporary experience. The Brudner Prize has thus far honored a long list of activists, artists, and scholars who have done critical work in this area. And we give our thanks to the donors of the prize, Steve Carlin, Michael Cornier, and Ben Pesner for making this happen. Today, this event would not have been possible without the work of Maureen Gardner back there, who's in our office in Women, Gender, and Sexuality Studies, who takes care of all the logistics and arrangements, to Ashley Lee Des-Ravines, who's also in the back there, who makes all the work possible. To the LGBT committee today, Jill Richards. Jill, where are you? Greta Lafleur. Greta? Is Greta here? No. And Avren Savja, who worked through the year to advance LGBTS studies at Yale University. I want to also recognize the help and support of Professor Emily Coates in the dance department, who's there, whose research and instruction at Yale are invaluable to advance dance in many interdisciplinary and broadening ways here. I want to finally also thank the Whitney Humanities Center and, last but not least, Yale Gala for their support as well. But before I introduce Professor Cox, I want to recognize the enthusiasm and presence of the community dance group from the Neighborhood Music School who are sitting in front. Please clap for them. And their teacher, Hanan Hamin, who's come here with some very excited and enthusiastic students, future dancers, and current and future dancers. Let me then turn to introduce Professor Amy Cox. She is just the perfect person to be introducing our honoree today. Professor Cox is a dancer and an anthropologist whose presence at Yale has brought a wonderful synergy across Black studies, performance studies, dance studies, and ethnography. She's jointly appointed as an associate professor in the departments of African American and anthropology here. Her first monograph, Shapeshifters, Black Girls and the Choreography of Citizenship, which came out in 2015, won a 2016 Victor Turner Book Prize in Ethnographic Writing, a very prestigious prize, and honorable mention in the 2016 Gloria Anzaldúa Book Prize given by the National Women's Studies Association. This book examines choreography as an aesthetic practice embodied and used by young Black women in Detroit's Fresh Start shelter. And she can do this pull together this work because she's also a former professional dancer who danced with Alvin Ailey and the Dance Theater of Harlem. Her next ethnographic project, Living Class Slow Death, explores the creative protest strategies individuals and communities enact to reclaim Black life in the urban United States. Amy Cox.
Hi, welcome, good afternoon. You can say, thank you. I need some call and response. Thank you for that. We are so fortunate to be able to gather in this space today to honor Bill T. Jones, choreographer, director, writer, dancer, spectacular change agent, and now the recipient of the 2018-19 James R. Brudner 83 Memorial Prize in LGBT Studies. When we were planning for this day last year, I knew I would be on sabbatical. But I also knew no matter where I was in the world, whether that was a deep delta of Mississippi where I actually was, that I would come back to be a part of this day. Because so often in the academy, we are called to these podiums under the presumption that we will pontificate and critique, demonstrate our facility with theory, essentially prove our intellect. But I thought you would be here, so I have to turn back and look at you. But let me tell you, it's exhilarating to approach the mic to simply unapologetically fawn over someone's undeniable greatness, and that is Bill T. Jones. And I think we should. Bill T. Jones, I am honored to celebrate all that you have given us and the countless ways you continue to challenge us to live more courageously, or what some might call to simply be better. You demand this through the over 100 works you have created for your own company, the Bill T. Jones Arnie Zane Dance Company, as well as other dance collectives and theater productions. You demand this through the power and beauty of your lyrical prose. You demand this through the searing truth-telling embedded in your every spoken word. And we need you and your work now, perhaps more than ever. In 2002, you said, and I quote, "I dare you in this debased culture to put yourself out there on the line. That is my politics right now. It is a politics of transformation." It is hard to believe that was 17 years ago. We are here still here. Every day confronted with the same old ways of destroying and slowly killing one another, but dressed up in what we might name now as neo-cruelties. The bodies you set in motion, however, even when dancing solos, are statements on a relationality that is a threat to this slow death. Could our connection to other bodies, to other spaces, to other souls, to other ways of being that we might only for now be able to access on the fuzzy edges of our memory or in the speculative plane of imagination lead us to something that may approach transformation? There is no doubt that engagement with your work catalyzes change. The too numerous to name awards and accolades you have earned are partial testimony to this, including your 1994 MacArthur Award, the 2006 Lucille Lortel Award, the induction into the American Academy of Arts and Sciences in 2009, the 2010 Kennedy Center Honors, your 2 Tony Awards for Spring Awakening in 2007 and FELA in 2010. But I don't want to spend this time naming the long list of awards that we can all easily read in our programs, or that I'm sure if we didn't already know, we Googled before our arrival here today. I am not, of course, implying that these awards are not important. They are, on the contrary, significant responses to a rich body of fiercely innovative work. But they can only point to your impact on our lives. I sometimes think of awards as the Amen choir that responds after we have already shouted, fallen out, and danced with the spirits. They come a little late. So I was talking about Bill T. Jones and this particular award a few days ago with a good friend of mine, Bernard Gilmore, who is a dancer with the Alvin Ailey American Dance Theater. In 2013, the Ailey Company performed D-Man in the Waters, the work that our Yale student dancers are currently rehearsing. D-Man in the Waters premiered at the Joyce Theater in New York City in 1989 during the height of the AIDS epidemic and remains a demanding work to both witness and dance. Every new audience member, every new dancer, every new generation is called by this exceptional piece to contend with the tensions between mortality and life, the inevitability of loss, and the inevitable will to survive despite, and sometimes because of those things and structures and people and ideas that would end us. Bernard had this to say about working with Bill T. Jones, and I'm quoting him. Bill is the ultimate artist. He demands your full commitment and wants your very best. You can't go through the motions or pretend with Bill. He sniffs out what is false and is only interested in your willingness to bring all of who you are so you can see all of who you could be. And you had to do this every time at every rehearsal. But unlike some other choreographers, he mainly asked this through his presence. He walks into the room and you could sense that you can't show up how you used to. You had to dig deeper and find your better self. I often failed, but I'm still trying. It was Jones's presence, this combination of palpable spiritual strength and kinetic magnetism that I experienced for the first time close up in the early 2000s. Bill and his company were performing in Ann Arbor and holding master classes at the University of Michigan, where I was a graduate student in anthropology at the time. Although I had danced with the Dance Theater of Harlem and Ailey too, I hadn't danced professionally or even had a technical dance class in over 3 years. I had convinced myself that I had to convince myself that I was no longer a dancer if I was to be taken seriously in the context of a doctoral program. I was a fool, I know. But more than that, I was terrified of being my full self in the ways that Bernard points to in his reflection on his time rehearsing D-Man in the Waters. I had taken huge master classes led by Jones and his company in New York City in the mid to late 90s, but was a face in the crowd. But as soon as he walked into the studio on that day in Ann Arbor, I felt a vibrational pull that drew me to him, and before I could stop myself, I heard myself say, Mr. Jones, I know you don't remember me. I've taken your classes with you before, years ago. I'm sure you don't remember. I don't mean to presume. I just want to tell you that I haven't danced in a while. And he interrupted me. I do remember you. Are you ready to dance? No, I meant that's what I wanted to say. I'm out of shape, my body, my hip. No, Jones said, and then laid 2 fingers lightly at the space around my heart. Are you ready to dance? In that moment, that clearly still resonates as if it happened this morning, I knew what he meant. I knew what he was asking, because Jones's sincere question is one that reverberates through all of his choreography, writing, and the dialogical spaces he creates at New York Live Arts. Are you ready? Are we ready? Meaning, are we ready to move beyond the expectations of technique, disciplines, and genres that shrink our capacities? Are we ready to approach movement in the body so that we can experience a transformation that moves with and beyond it? Are we ready to be here now, informed by the past but not bound by it, and attuned to a future that resists the allure of fantasy and the easy danger of hope, but instead is built on the difficult work of self-reflexive and collective serving concrete action? Are we ready? I can guess that we are at least ready to now hear from the brilliant Bill T. Jones today as he offers his lecture, Insanity's Sense, Thinking and Making Now. Won't you please join me in welcoming Bill T. Jones?
Fantastic. Thank you so much. Thank you. Hello. Thank you very much. Thank you. Ooh, and dancers in the front row. Yes. So Emily, if I'd known this was going to be happening, we should have had the company, because you're going to hear me jaw on after that introduction. Everything she's talking about, yes, I speak a lot, and I do have a Southern Baptist heart, which I inherited from my mother. But the truth is in the movement. And as you see in front of you is an aged body, right? Just found out today at 67 I'm officially considered old now, right? But we won't be concerned. Thank you very much, everyone. I'd like to, first of all, thank all those persons who made it possible for me to receive this prize, and to Jim himself. I'd like to thank the Program for Lesbian, Gay, Bisexual, and Transgender Studies here at Yale, the Program for Women's Gender and Sexuality Studies at Yale, the Whitney Humanities Center, and Yale Gala, and Professor Grayall, and of course, the so beautiful Amy, which you said. It's going to be discursive. It will be heavily anecdotal. I know I came to give it a lecture, but this is how we do it. Every performance, every speech is an improvisation. And I'm confused about that, because I have, once being at Skowhegan, I was invited to come up and do studio visits. You all know Skowhegan, right? Important artist residency, artist colony. And that night, I was trying to get real and do some of the things that Amy congratulated me for. And I was saying to people, what would you live for? How do you speak your truth? And somebody said, yeah, you know, you're a performer. We are thinkers, artists. We work with a medium. You're a performer. That's why it's easy for you to say that. So, I understand. So I am going to speak today, and I'm going to try to speak in a way that is performative, but it's really about a conversation. And I do hope that we can speak together later. You look like you're the teacher, right? They've seen work? Good, 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 because they're going to hear a lot of the stuff behind the work. And I just want you to be sure that you understand that what we do is a noble thing, a noble and brave thing, because we use these most elemental possessions that we have that connect us as human beings, our bodies. But today, it's about the mind. Everybody here read Moby Dick? Is anyone who has not read Moby Dick? Well, it's an honest group. Well, I want to start this way because my speech, my lecture, my performative event is about the experience of each work being the desire to solve and ask questions and to solve those questions. Like many people who were educated in the 1950s, actually at that time it felt like hell, but actually I realized it was a very good period. Small school in upstate New York, potato growing, fruit growing community, full of Germans and Italians, and the black folks were there, who were there, like the Joneses, the Williamses, just a handful of us. We were the workforce. I'm number 10 of a family of 12. My mother and father made their living picking potatoes. I have picked potatoes. I have tied grapes. I know something about that. But we were not supposed to stay there. This was the American story as understood by Gus Jones, who in 1955 decided to become a black Yankee. Big deal, huh? I'm born in Bunnell, Florida. What did my dad mean by black Yankee? He had 12 kids, and the older kids removed sometimes 6 school systems a year. Can you imagine making new friends 6 times a year? And you're supposed to be learning your reading, writing, arithmetic. How are you doing, sir? It's a great honor to see that handsome face. Yes. So my dad wanted to go up north so that his kids could have the benefits of the white kids. The school books that they had in the South. My older brothers and sisters said that the teachers had a way of teaching that the South won the Civil War. They didn't really talk about slavery. The books were terrible. They were scribbled on, horrible things were written in them because they came from across town at the white schools and they ended up with the black schools. Okay, all forgiven. We're in a new time now, right? So let's not spend too much time. My heart's heavy still. And sometimes with age, it gets heavier. And I'm the generation that, now you little ones, close your ears, dropped acid at Woodstock. Turn on, tune in, drop out, right? Freedom, freedom, right? Moby Dick. This book, I read it several times, well, maybe 1.5 times, but only as an adult, and particularly in the last 10 years, I read it again. And there was a character called Pip in it. Pip, P-I-P. Why didn't I hear or read him when I was in high school? Was it Ferguson? Was it Eric Garner? Was it Trayvon Martin? Why did that great novel suddenly become for me about this 11-year-old black boy who comes from Connecticut? No, he is not from a slave situation. He is on the Pequod, and he is like a kind of a ship's janitor or what have you. And he ends up one day literally doing the manly work, which is being in the small slave ships where the harpooneers are. He shouldn't have been there. He's frightened. He could barely swim. The whale goes underneath the boat. This is not Moby Dick. This is just a whale, and it bumps the boat. He jumps out. Scared, he jumps out. He's in the water, entangled. And Mr. Stubb, the first mate, says, "Stay in the boat, Pip." Okay. They have to decide if they're going to release him and lose the whale, and they release him. But next time we're going to leave you. Now, did they really mean it? Sure enough, he ends up back in another boat in a few weeks. Same thing happens. Boom, and he jumps out. He's petrified. And this time, just as they're about to make that fatal decision, because after all, as Mr. Stubb had said before, we can get a lot more for the whale than we can for you, Pip. They were still selling black folks at that time. So it was serious. But anyways, before they can decide, they spot a school of whales. This is a business. They're out there to make money. So there's this little guy in the water there. They all leave. Now, as Melville says brilliantly, they didn't mean to leave him. But the fact is, they had business to attend to. And there's this thing described wherein the ship's bobbing in the water. After a minute, they're a mile. And then they're 4 miles away. And then they're gone. And he is alone, bobbing in the Pacific Ocean. You know what a clove looks like? That spice? He said that his little black head was bobbing up in the Pacific Ocean, up and down, like a clove. And the loneliness was unbearable. By the merest chance, the ship itself at last rescued him. But from that hour, the little Negro went about the deck an idiot. Such, at least, they said he was. The sea had jeeringly kept his finite body up, but drowned the infinite of his soul. Not drowned entirely, though, rather carried down alive to wondrous depths, where strange shapes of the unwarped primal world glided to and fro before his passive eyes, and the miser man wisdom revealed his hoarded heaps, and among the joyous, heartless, ever-juvenile eternities, Pip saw the multitudinous, God omnipresent, coral insects that out of the firmament of waters heaved the colossal orbs. He saw God's foot upon the treadle of the loom and spoke it, and therefore his shipmates called him mad. So man's insanity is heaven's sense. Man's insanity is heaven's sense. Now, a lot of us artists play crazy. It's kind of attractive. It means you're not responsible, you're childlike, and you're that precious thing, spontaneous. And I've been thinking about this lecture today. I don't want my doctor to be insane. I don't want the person who educates my children to be insane. I don't want my politicians to be insane. But then why do I value that quality? And let me see if I can get my technology to help me out here. And I went to Merriam-Webster Dictionary, definition of sane, proceeding from a sound mind, rational, mentally sound, especially able to anticipate and appraise the effect of one's actions, healthy in body. Insane. Exhibiting a severely disordered state of mind, affected with mental illness. The law says affected with insanity, criminally insane, unable to think in a clear or sensible way, crazy. Used by typically of or intended for mentally ill people, such as we say in an insane asylum. So as I was saying, Pip became a kind of a seer on the boat. He could tell the truth. The weakest person on the boat is like a homeless person. He no longer does his duties, but what are you going to do? He's out in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. The captain meets him one day and is struck by him. This crazy captain, the most powerful man on the boat, the uber white man on the boat, meets the 11-year-old black boy who is like an idiot. And he is so moved that he says, "You from now on will live with me." And he moves the boy into his cabin. This is not gay. It was not homoerotic, but there was something about the power dynamic that this child spoke to the captain about insanity and its opposite. So what's this got to do with Bill T. Jones? When I just finished my trilogy, 3 works, we just presented it the other night in Boston, 3 works that are built around oral histories, or 2 oral histories, the third a quasi-oral history. The first is about my companion, my husband Bjorn Ameland's mother, a Jewish woman in World War II, who at age 19 is running to get medicine from her mother, who is dying of cancer as the Nazis are coming into Antwerp. She and her sisters escape to the south of France. The father joins them later. The mother has died. Dora discovers at that time there's 2 types of people, those who need help, those who give help, and she decides that she's going to be one of those who gives help. Amazing woman. I love her very much. She's now in a facility in Paris, but at that time, I did this oral history with her for my companion and his brother, because she's telling stories that they need to have as their patrimony. I need to hear. The second one is my nephew, Lance Theodore Briggs. He is very handsome. He was a beautiful boy, born in 1970. His mother, Jahari Briggs, is, well, for this short period now, we always fought as kids because she's only 1 year older. Because my birthday is February 15th, hers is in March. So in a few weeks, she'll be a year and a half older than I am. And that was a big deal when we were kids. But I've known Lance since he was a little boy, and Lance was the first gay child that I knew of in the family. Bill was out. Bill was a freak, right? Bill was with a white boy. This is how the people talked about who and what I was. But then my sister gives birth to a very sensitive, lively, I think hyperactive kid who loves me. His Uncle Bill. He said that I had 2 models, you, Uncle Bill, and Michael Jackson. Woo! But everyone loved Michael Jackson, right? Is it all right to love Michael Jackson now? Mm-hmm. Hashtag out for Michael. So I wanted to make a work about my family. Dora is my family, but Dora is a heroic figure. Lance is messy business. Here is a child at risk, a black child, a black male child, growing up, a black gay male child, growing up in San Francisco in the 1970s. Rape, pederast, prostitute by the time he was 14, but he'd been doing ballet. And all Uncle Bill knew about him was that he was going to be another dancer in the family. Did I really know what it meant to be 11, 12, 13 years old in San Francisco in the early 1970s? I didn't. Did I want to know? No, I was too busy enjoying the fantasy of him having a middle-class life as a working artist. Say it again, middle-class life as a working artist. No, this was not about pushing against anything. This was wanting to be included, being able to pay bills, being able to eat what I want, being able to drive the car I want. But I found this out only when he ended up in jail. He ended up, now he's paraplegic. He's in a wheelchair. I mean, as he said, this vehicle that is my body, I ran it until the wheels came off. I wish it was different. I wish it was different. But you'll make up for it, won't you? Yes. No, that's a rhetorical one. They don't quite. This is part of the performative. You know, let me do it for the time being. You'll get your time. And that was. Then there was the third one, which was based on a book by W.G. Sebald. The book is about Ambrose Adelwart. Did the writer actually have an uncle who was born in the 1890s, came to New York in 1911, a buttoned-up, impeccable manservant who was hired by one of the wealthiest Jewish banking families to watch over their son, Cosmo Solomon. Cosmo, who was prone to eccentricity. Cosmo, who ultimately ends up having a nervous breakdown and dying in an insane asylum. But in the meantime, Ambrose and Cosmo had this relationship. Now, the writer never says what the relationship is, but their older relatives, the older Germans, who were, quote, outclassed by this buttoned-up, impeccable man, they were outclassed by him. But he was of the other persuasion, quote. Other persuasion? And the two of them have this relationship, and they travel in Europe, and they're in the Holy Land, and so on. And that piece is the third of the trilogy. The other night I was performing at the ICA in Boston, and it was a wonderful performance. The audience appreciated it very much. And then a woman raised her hand, and she had been watching the Dora piece. I do a lot of partnering. I don't know if you know, I made my reputation with Arnie Zane, 5'4", Jewish-Italian man. I'm 6'1", African-American. We were doing this kind of newfangled partnering where a little person could lift a bigger person, and we were rolling on the ground together and doing all these outrageous things together, and it was all about form and reinventing the language of partnering. This language is still at work in a work like Dora and Lance and Ambrose. But she raised her hand and she said, you know, you say you're postmodern, but postmodern is about questioning gender roles. Now, where she got that from, I don't know. And she said, and I watched and I timed. There was all of these duets, and there was only one short moment where two men danced together. And I said, oh, so you're saying I'm a self-hating homosexual? No, 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 that's glib, she says. That's glib. And maybe I was, but what are you saying? She was counting the duets and who was dancing. I teach gender studies, she said. And I'm very disappointed. Well, I said, you have to come and see the other pieces. You have to see Lance. Lance is, you can't get a more gay-themed work. And the partnering is gender blind. Ambrose is about two men who are having a relationship. So here we are, academia. And what are the rules? And who determines what is correct and what is not? Do you? Is that what you're being trained to do? And how do you feel about that? Okay, Deep Blue Sea. I made that connection with Pip because I realized that as much as I have been rewarded for my work, and I've been alone. Now we got lovely academics like yourself who were former dancers. There was a gap between what we were doing downtown and what Mr. Ailey or Arthur Mitchell was doing. They tolerated me, but it wasn't real dancing. The avant-garde had no class, no race, no gender, or so they said. And then they got woke, or they're trying to get woke. You know who the Guerrilla Girls are? This was a women's collective that began to do actions in the 70s. Why there were not more galleries representing female artists? Why museums did not have more female artists? They were talking back to the power. So they were saying to the avant-garde that saw itself as classless, raceless, genderless, you are not. And there was this thing called identity politics. And it became a rallying cry around the time that Arnie Zane was dying from complications of AIDS in our bedroom, in my arms, with his mother, Jewish woman, and his father, converted to Judaism, my entire dance company, my three sisters singing Negro spirituals, and Barbra Streisand, because he loved Barbra Streisand. This was a time when suddenly who you were became very important. I remember Mr. Ailey died in 1989, was it? And just the other day, as a matter of fact, yesterday, I was being interviewed by Mr. Ailey, about Mr. Ailey in a documentary about him. And then one of the questions was, well, I hope you take this respectfully, Mr. Jones, but Mr. Ailey was discreet about his status, discreet. And he never spoke about having AIDS. What do you think about now? We're trying to do this, and should we respect that? And close your ears again. I said, hell no. No, don't respect it. If Alvin was alive now, I think he'd want to get it right. Who are we protecting him from? Protecting his reputation from? To be loved by your community, particularly if your community is deeply homophobic, then it becomes a risk if you go down with a guilty disease. And that's what AIDS was. It was a guilty disease. This happened to people who were not living right. So Arnie Zane died in March of '88. Alvin Ailey died, I believe, in '89. We were in Washington performing at the Kennedy Center. When I got the news, the company was about to go to the theater, I think, and I heard that Alvin had died. And I was being asked to come to the National Endowment, one of those buildings in Washington there, and testify before a blue ribbon panel about what? I think it was about HIV/AIDS or something like that. But on the way there, I had to walk through demonstrations. Now, you've heard about Mr. Brudner and his involvement with ACT UP. Well, the streets were full of people laying down, and the police were all wearing yellow gloves. Did they ever tell you about that? There was a time when if someone had HIV, it was rumored if you touched them, you could get it. So the police are out there arresting people and I'm walking through this to go to talk to politicians and art leaders about it. And that was the first day that the Day Without Art, December 1st, was launched. And all arts organizations were asked to be black that day, dark, so that the public would know what was happening to the artist in their midst. My company was doing D-Man in the Waters, and it was hot. Everyone knew what had happened. Arnie had died. They knew that we were the company that had it, and yet yours truly was out there, right? Arthur Aviles, one of the most brilliant dancers of his generation. If you're interested you should look him up, Aviles, A-V-I-L-E-S. He runs a theater now in the Bronx, but he was a premier dancer in my group. We didn't have soloists, but he was compared often to Nijinsky because of the beauty of his body. He was a diver, Puerto Rican man, really beautiful body, and very tough. Because I brought the company together and I said, okay, what are we going to do? They're saying that nobody should be performing today, and we have our chance to perform at the Kennedy Center tonight. So everyone was like, oh, I don't know, this is so important. And he said, I refuse to perform. I refuse to perform. So if you have your lead, very important dancer who refuses to perform, everybody can't perform. So what did we do? We told them that we would not perform, we would be in the theater, and when the audience came, tickets in hand, we would say that to show solidarity, we would not perform until 12:01 a.m., in the middle of the night. So please come back and we'll perform for you. People were very angry. How are you punishing us? We're here to see the work, the art. Why are you punishing us? Is this politics or is this art? Is this politics or is this art? So we performed at 12:01, and something changed. I think I understood something for the first time about that membrane that separates aesthetic action from political action. I'm so glad Arthur did that. Mr. Ailey, as I was on camera yesterday, hopefully it wasn't too performative, I asked his permission to be talking about him in the way that we are now allowed to talk about him. We can talk about his problems with loneliness. We can talk about the fact that here he was one of the greatest choreographers America has ever produced. There's no one around the world like him, not in France, not in London. It came from this culture. Kudos to this troubled culture in this land of apartheid. But he was lonely. I remember visiting him when his company was in LA. We were performing in a smaller theater, and they were Yale Company. And he invited me over because he was asking me to do a work for the company. And I walked, it was the day off, and all these beautiful black bodies are in the pool and so on, and everyone's carrying on. And Mr. Ailey, he's up there, and I go up to his room, and it's a little dark, and he's sitting in there alone. Alone. Who was taking care of him? Who was? Something about the way it's set up. We want your genius, but we're not responsible for you. And how do you do it if you're a person, male, female, transgender, but in particular, gay men? What is there about that sea that Pip was in, that the art world actually does to you? You're out there alone and bobbing. And oftentimes, your body is held up, but your mind goes down and it cracks. So, What about Jerome Robbins with his problems with drinking? What about how many artists do we know with drugs and so on? Obsessive behavior, sexual addiction. And your mind cracks, and if we, the world, is lucky, you still turn out masterpieces. A lot of us just become trash, garbage. And then next, because that's what it's about, isn't it? I say this sometimes, and people are maybe being dramatic, but there's something about art and the way we're taught to respect genius. I say, quite frankly, they don't care if you eat children for breakfast, as long as you turn in a masterpiece. We can forget your life. That's why I ask about Michael. Is it all right to love Michael again? Remember what it was like? Jacko? Was he a pederast? All of that? One of the most brilliant performers of all times. Do you really care? I'll tell you something, I don't care. I don't care. I want the work. I want the genius. Now, the deals that I have made, the woman the other night, looking at this beautiful display, and she is now saying, you're not correct. So there is now voices coming from both directions. We used to say right wing, right wing, right wing. Now it's the left wing as well, telling you better do this, this, and this. Artists don't give a damn. You can punish me, don't come see it. This is the rules. Don't let them tell you anything else. Do the work. Make something meaningful, deep, connecting. The rest of it is chitter-chatter. Easy to say, hard to do. The water bears your body up, but your mind gets taken down and cracked because we need community. We need to be loved as people. But at the same token, you are this other thing. Sniffles. Deep Blue Sea. Deep Blue Sea is going to be a work, and we've already started it. It's going to start with a solo. For me, first time I've been back on stage in quite a few years. Not dancing so much as moving in a spatially provocative way, this shape. It's being commissioned by the Armory, huge space, like I think 2 football fields or something. And I did a version of it at Mass Mocha. I was invited by Nick Cave, a wonderful visual artist, and he had created kind of oceanic decor, and he asked people, artists, to come in and, quote, respond to it. So mine was this walking constantly and quoting something. Lasted free, lasted free. Almighty God, thank, we're lasted free. Spiritual Negro old and be will. Black boys, white boys, black girls, white girls, Jews, Gentiles, Catholics, hold hands, and in the words of the old Negro spiritual say, free at last, thank God Almighty, I'm free at last. But I do it backwards, and it sounds very strange. It sounds very much like nonsense. It sounds mad. And the idea is, as I'm walking this, do you care enough about it that you turn it around? I don't know how you all are feeling about we're all going to grab hands and say free at last. I'm not feeling it right now. How are you doing? You feel like part of the great family of humanity? Or do you feel like a woman who knows something about being oppressed and raped and exploited? Do you feel like a gay person? Do I need to go through the litany of things? We just got the right to declare openly that we can marry. Do you feel like a trans person that is often invisible? If there are any trans persons in the room right now, I'm sure you could say what I've heard from people who work with me and who have now joined the company. The world is very blind to who we are. Do you feel like a Native American? Do you feel like an immigrant? Where is the great project of we that they taught us about? Oh, maybe it's just temporary, huh? So Deep Blue Sea has Bill T. Jones, this well-known activist voice, walking and chanting one of the most loved documents backwards, and every once in a while, this story of Pip keeps bubbling up. The second section of the piece is my company. My company, how many? There's almost equal, 5 and 5. The numbers are changing all the time. And I say that this is, if the first section is about loneliness, the second section is about what the company has been. It's been a kind of a boat, a cocoon or something that has kept me, madness and all. And I think as time goes on, I become more mad, more mercurial, more angry at a flash, more loving, more risk-taking. Success is a son of a... Success is difficult. As Frida Rosen, my lesbian socialist therapist, used to say, you know, success has a conservatizing effect on people. When you have something to lose, it's not so easy to, right? You got a bank account. You have a tenured position somewhere. You have children. Free at last, free at last. Free from what? So this first section, lonely man. Second section, with the company. Third section, now, 100 people. Hopefully 100 people that look like the world we'd like to live in. And when we did it at the Armory, it was like amazing that we did a work in progress. It had to be very fast because try paying everybody to be there, 100 people. But there was the sense that one of the few times in my life, I was in a room where there were more people of color than white people. That's the other part about the Bill T. Jones narrative. It's hard to have a black audience. Well, why do you care what color the audience is? Why do we care what color the audience is? What did you say about call and response? Oh, it's deep, isn't it? You want to open your mouth and say, how you doing? All right! You want to feel the funk come through the air. You don't want, as my sister said, I want to be people who know my name. What does she mean by that? My mother's name, her mother's name. But it was the first time, and this work, which will probably be, it will be toured around the States. We're definitely going to the Holland Festival, Germany, Manchester. I wonder how it'll play in Europe, because they think that we have particular problems here that are not their problems. And it's not true. What will it mean to get 100 people in Germany to come out and be the voices or the bodies of the disenfranchised or the invisible persons? What does it mean to get 10 trans people to come and share this time with people who maybe are extremely, I don't think that some of those people there actually know any trans people. The people who came to support me, do they really know what it's like to share a dressing room with a trans person? I don't. But everywhere we go with this piece, that will be one of the things that we do. We have to find that community, the one that is now the boat that is Bill T. Jones' Arnie Zane Company, has moved into the waters of a different world, making in this era the world that is so broken up, so fractured, and so angry. I won't presume. I'm going to stop in a moment. Maybe you'll tell me, how are you doing with anger? How are you doing? Sometimes it shakes me to my bones. It shakes me to my damn bones. My friend says to me, my companion says, you know, Bill is always black. Everything is black now. Black and white. What happened? I was at Woodstock when I was 17. Remember? I was naked, swimming. Turn on, tune in, drop out. You are not your body. You're not your parents. You're something else. You're spirit. You're light. Did I lose something? I don't know. Maybe you'll tell me. Anger, happiness, community, we, sanity. You know, I gave a version of this speech at a thing called Campfire. And this is Mr. Jeff Bezos, yes, that Jeff Bezos. He, once a year, invites 200 people, Reese Witherspoon, Tom Ford, John Hamm of Mad Men, Bill T. Jones, Marlon James, and Bette Midler. And we're just, for a weekend, you eat canopies and drink wine, and everyone, quote, is just hanging out together. They take the whole Biltmore, incidentally, and it's all, they flew us out by chartered planes and all. So imagine being on stage with a room like that and saying, the people, particularly since Arnie died, and I became very public about certain aspects of my biography, they would, journalists, oftentimes in France, would say, well, Mr. Jones, you are an artiste engagé. And what does that mean, artiste engagé? The implication is that it's an engaged artist. You're engaged in the world, whereas artists, as understood before this era of identity, we're dealing with something up here. Artists are dealing with pure ideas, Apollonian aspirations. And then our generation, we're now producing the likes of Bill T. Jones that are engaged. Some people say they're confused because they should be doing politics, but they think they're making art. I don't care. So here I am performing, and I'm saying, what should an artist do? And this is an old saw of a line, you probably have heard it. I said an artist should be the freest person in the society. Sometimes, literally running naked through the streets, thumbing their nose at all received wisdom. Don't tell me. An artist should be the freest person, but an artist is a man, a woman, a cisgendered man, cisgendered woman, transgender person. An artist is a person with a location. What class were you born in? An artist is a person who is in some ways determined by what's your bank account, what's your credit card status. An artist is a person, and what does that person need or want to do? So when someone says to you, what should an artist do? You try giving them that. Be free. Be truthful. Be free. Be truthful. So some of the adults in the room are probably laughing. So easy to say, isn't it? Those are words that usually only young people use. The rest of us have gone from black and white to a kind of gray. And that's where I am today. That's the truth of who I am right now, the person that you heard about. This person is going from one day to the other, from one question to the other, from one project to the other, and hoping that something happens. Do I want you to love me? Yeah, I do. And if you don't, I suffer. But so what? Does the work get deeper? Is my construction better? Is the understanding, the intention of what I do getting clearer? And an old saw again, the great Marcel Duchamp. Do you know who he is, of course? In some ways, you couldn't have a lot of modern art that we do, including Andy Warhol, all those people without this Frenchman, who had this idea about art that it is primarily an intellectual activity that comes in through the eyes and goes through the mind. I say art comes in through the eyes, goes to the mind, and if it's good enough, it goes to the heart. But that's not for everybody. Is that the black part? Is that the African part? Yeah, I'm messing with you. No answers, just questions. And gratitude. And gratitude. Walk, walk, don't you get weary. Walk, walk, don't you get weary. Walk, walk, don't you get weary. Can you help me finish it? I know. I learned it from Jesse Norman myself, but this was supposedly a song that was back, I believe it's slavery. When you've been working from the dawn to the end of the day, the light is failing, you are tired, but you can see the barn. You can see it. You better walk, walk, don't you get weary. We're going to do the same thing tomorrow, and then the day after that, and we're in bondage. But right now, we have to walk. Keep moving, keep moving, keep moving, keep moving. That is what I'm doing right now in my art. Trying to put one step in front of the other. And look at you all. Will you remember this? You're not obliged to. Someday they're going to say, there was this dude called Jones. My teacher took us to see him talk once, and he talked a lot, Doesn't matter, does it? What did Maya Angelou say her grandmother told her? I don't know what to make of this, Bjorn. When she said people think entirely too much about their position in the world. She said, bring me a bucket of water over here. These black women, right? Bring me a bucket of water over here. You want to know what difference you make in the world? Take your hand and put it in that water. Now take it out. Look at the water. Do you see any imprint on that water? That is a vision of life. Now, how do you put that together with the big feelings that drive art making, with the desire for truth and change? How do you put your hand in the water, take it out, look at the surface of the water, there's no trace. How do you put those realities together? Walk, walk, don't you get weary. Let's stop. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. How much time do we have, Maureen? We got a little time, Maureen? Yes, let's take a few questions. Let's talk a little bit. Yes, sir. What's your name? Jordan. How's it sound, Jordan? Yeah, because he was here earlier and we were doing the sound check, and he spoke up. Thank you for that, Jordan. What's on your mind?
Will you let us know how the spiritual is? Walk, don't you believe?
Well, it actually turns into Jesus or Christ, and I don't really quite, there's a campground meeting on the promised land. Walk, walk, don't you get really, there's a campground meeting in the promised land, which I don't like. I'm not interested in the promised land. What do I get here? That's my problem with a lot of music of our people. They're always being promised something. It's gonna get better. I don't know, maybe I'm just a crass, materialistic, 21st century person. But no, I want it here. I want you and me to share it. Why do you ask that? You feel the walk? And you're young, man. And yeah, good for you. Remember this moment in 30 years. You said to me, I feel the walk. And I said, you're young. And then you're going to be, I don't know, I'm looking at you, you're probably going to be roughly my age, maybe a little younger. And will you be weary then? Will you still be able to walk? I don't know. We don't know, do we? Life has surprises for us. Anyone else? Yes. Thank you very much. Bye-bye. And? Lord have mercy. Come, please. Just one moment, please. We will continue. You don't just walk out like that now. It's one of my oldest friends.
Hi.
Good to see you. Good to see you. Anne Green. Yes, sir. What were you saying?
Oh, yeah. You talk about, artists doing whatever they like. And
Well, whatever they'd like, whatever they need to do. That's different, Whatever they like or whatever they need to do. Yes, please continue. Yeah.
and so we're trying to process that. Sometimes one wants to create art that leans more political, or has a more concrete idea of how society wants to see something.
Utilitarian? No, I'm saying, is that what you mean? Art that has a use, a social use?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And so then the response from society is like, okay, great, let's use it. But
Or is that the response from society?
I feel like it is nowadays.
Yeah, maybe. That's good, nowadays. Because, there was a time when people used to say to me, man, if you want to do politics, do politics. You want to make art, make art. What did Merce think about it? Yes.
And then but whenever you create art, it's influenced by yourself.
It's influenced by yourself.
Yeah, I would say so.
It's coming out of yourself.
But I don't feel like it's entirely yours.
It's coming out of you.
Yeah.
Is your voice yours?
At times.
Anyways, please keep going.
And then so my question is it all art then almost utilitarian? Because you have ideas of how life should be, what you would like to strive to be. You're walking.
Are you an artist?
In a sense,
Well, have you made anything?
I have.
Okay, well, let's just talk like people who make, right? Because, art does a lot of things once it's in the world. And in a way, you do give it away once it's in the world. Unless it's a body-based art and your body is the object of it, that's a different issue. So I'm trying to understand what you're saying. You would like to think that there's still this separation. There's the political, utilitarian art, and then there's this other one. What's the other one?
Yeah, I can't imagine another. I think all art is political.
Oh, my goodness. The message got to your generation, didn't it? I thought that was my best line 30 years ago. All art is political. Because if you look at, let's say, Jackson Pollock. Paint. Is that political? How so? How so? Ah, so it's about the intention of the artist.
And then that influences how you create it. Like, why make something? You know, I was raised in that don't contribute something unless you need. Like, why are you doing something? If you don't have something to say, don't say it. Which I get my difference slightly than what I'm asking. But I feel like the one creation, something not worth saying.
Yes. So what's the intention? What's your name?
Zalea.
Zillia? Mm-hmm.
Zalea.
How old are you?
13.
Yes. And you dance why?
Because that's what I plan to do as I get older for the rest of my life.
Yes. Well, do you think you're going to live a long time?
I hope so.
Mm-hmm. We're walking backwards now.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Why are we doing this?
I mean, you started it and I followed.
Yeah, because I asked you to, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you think I had an intention when I asked you to come up here?
Yes.
And if I did, is it political?
No.
I'm going to lean on you. Open your leg a little wider, and bend your knees. Right. More. How far can you go until it's too much? Say, let me know when it's too much. Say now.
Now.
Come back, come back. In some circles, this is a duet. And you saw it happen right in front of you. I don't know if it's a great duet, but it's a duet. We just made something. I made it in the moment. So, is it political? Yes. I'm older. She could probably be my granddaughter, right? We're both African. She's female, I'm male. There's all sorts of stuff you can read into what we're about, but what does it mean? What it means is what's going on in your head right now. You determine what the meaning is. And you, my brother, I encourage you to get out of the way of your own being. Make something that you don't know why. You don't know how, you don't know where it's going to go. Make it. Hopefully you don't hurt anybody. Make it and then make another one. Then things begin to happen. People have responses to it. You have responses to their response. And before you know it, there's a conversation going on around what you do. That's the promise of art making. I thank you for being so articulate and brave enough to speak up in this moment. That's very powerful. It's a good thing an artist has happened, but some artists never speak. They hate to speak. They just do. This is a brave woman. She came here to be an audience. She's now a performer. Or is she a performer? What? Let's hear it. One more. Yes, sir.
You mentioned briefly in the beginning about being performative, and then like the counter, I guess the counter of that is being changed. But I don't know if I believe that is an dichotomy. But
I've been playing with it for years. And because I always wanted to feel like the best preaching. Oh, that's a Southern Baptist, black Southern Baptist feeling, right? I want it to feel like it's coming out. I am calling out. And then your applause, your attention is another way of coming forward. It shores me up, and I want to give you something. So, whatever it takes to do it, if it's a beautiful prose, if it's Shakespeare, Martin Luther King, he's a very good writer. But what is he saying? It has utility, it has purpose, but it's also, when he says, so you can hear it in his voice, free at last, you know, that's pretty authentic. He's sharing something very precious with you. As my high school teacher, Mary Lee Shakey, said, she was trying it out on me when the speech was happening. She said, it's an example of bathos. I said, what? You know, that's sort of the logic, isn't it, of speeching. It's like putting together an argument. And is it an intellectual pursuit or is it an emotional pursuit? With the African American prophetic tradition, they come together. That's why so many of the political leaders in African American life have been actually religious leaders. I'm not so down with religion, but I understand why that works that way. So, in a way, are you an artist? Mm-hmm. Are you a sincere person? Yeah. Do you understand irony? How insincerity can be used, but used for a purpose that is sincere, correct? Because anything other than that, if it's used for a purpose that's more lies on top of lies and cleverness for the sake of cleverness, it will be found out and it will be nothing. And much pop culture is that. Its purpose is to entertain you. It's like eating McDonald's French fries. Not very good for you, but it tastes really good. But then the next day, it's gone. Yeah. So, sincerity. You smart people, right? Two smart, and two men spoke. Let's hear it for this, the part that you got here. Because oftentimes the men are quiet, but sincerity and its opposite. You know what I say when people come to watch my work? And people wonder, how do I do this? I say, watch yourself watching. Where did you yawned earlier, right? You know? So, oh shoot, I lost her. Oh no, okay, well, maybe she needs a nap, right? So, where is there that moment when you are, as my mother says, you step out on the word? Now, she's a religious woman. Does that happen for artists? Does it happen in academia? When someone is transported, there's some impulse that is without shape, without name. Poets do this all the time. They're putting a couple of words together to suggest something that is beyond description. They have to believe in those words. Yeah. Thank you very much. Bye-bye. Thank you.